What's up, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. For our first question, Audrey and Diamond Man 307 ask if Andor will connect with Star Wars Rebels, and what events from Rebels will we see in live action?
I think that it might in season 2, but not in season 1. It sounds like season 1 is that 1 year period, 5 years before the events of Rogue One. And I think it's going to be all about Cassian and Mon Mothma. I don't think there's really a way to bring in the Rebels crew that early in the story.
Yeah, plus, depending on how many of the Rebels crew we end up seeing in Ahsoka, it would make sense to introduce them in that show, and then if it fits, bring them into Andor Season 2.
Yeah, so Andor Season 1 is 5 years before Rogue One. I believe that's when Star Wars Rebels Season 1 takes place as well. But at that point, all of the rebellion is not like a rebel alliance yet. They're all various scattered cells that, at the end of Rebels Season 1, we see the Lothal cell get kind of pulled in closer to Bail Organa and Ahsoka and everything they're doing. So I think Andor's probably going to tell a similar story from Andor's point of view, that he'll be off on his own cell. Saw Gerrera will be part of the partisans over here, but they're not really working together yet. That'd be my guess.
It's going to be really cool if we get to see kind of like the beginnings of the Yavin base. We hear General Syndulla's name being called in Rogue One, so she's there, she's around.
Yeah, I think the closer and closer we get to Rogue One, the more and more likely that a connection to Rebels is to happen. I do think that the way that they've described season 2 of Andor is that every 3 episodes is going to cover 1 year of Cassian's life. So I guess that that final year before Rogue One is when we might have all those characters in the same place. We're not sure if every episode is going to cover 4 months, or if it's going to be 3 distinct big events from that 1 year, or if it's going to be like an arc where 3 years before Rogue One, Cassian met K2SO, and here are 3 episodes that tell that specific story. It's we're still a little unclear of how season 2 is going to work.
You know who else is on the Yavin base, and who I really hope to see interact with K2SO if he's in season 2, and that's Chopper.
Yeah.
And we know they have a Chopper because they brought him out for Celebration.
They had one at Rogue One. I think they've probably updated his design. He looked like he could do a lot more at Celebration this year. I think that a connection is likely. I'm not expecting in season 2 to have Cassian going on a mission with Hera. It would be cool, but since none of that stuff happened in Star Wars Rebels, I'm guessing that it won't happen in Andor. But there are events that I would like to see in Andor. So the episode where the Ghost Crew helps Mon Mothma, and she makes her transmission across the galaxy, starting the Rebel Alliance and actually gathering all the different cells into one location and one organization. She's on the run because she made a big speech in the Senate condemning Palpatine. So show that, and then show us Cassian hearing her speech at Dantooine. I would love to see some of that Rebel stuff from a new perspective.
Damien Vonderhaar and Andrew Zhu want to know if Palpatine will appear in Andor in person, in a hologram, or not at all.
I think that if we're going into the Imperial Senate, there should be some Palpatine presence. I would really like to see his relationship with the Imperial Senators.
I think, there has to be a cameo somewhere. In person, maybe. I think hologram is much more likely because that's what we saw in Obi-Wan. And then just for ease of filming for Ian McDiarmid, I think hologram is way more likely, but I would love to see him in person in the Senate building.
I'm the same way. For some reason, hologram just seemed more likely to me. And Palpatine, I could see being the kind of leader to just sit back and record a message and
Literally
be like,
phone it in.
yeah, really. Just like, okay, all of you have fun at Imperial Senate today doing nothing because whatever you do, I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen. So I don't know why he would even waste his time there. But if we could build to something where he's like, all right, I got to get out of bed and get down there. Like, I got to really put Mon Mothma in her place, or try to. I would love to see live action Palpatine in that little pod in the middle of the Senate room. Like, we have seen that in trailers and it was empty. So that's part of me. I'm like, okay, so he just is really phoning it in. He's not there. But we have seen him in animated form in the Bad Batch in the Imperial Senate. So that's way closer to the time of Revenge of the Sith. But I think that there's a chance for live action Palpatine. And I would really like to see him in that context where he's not like openly an evil dark sorcerer. He's still like a political leader of sorts. Yeah. I'd like to see how that looks.
And Masamita is there with him too.
Of course. Tommy Two Horns.
Diabologist asks if we'll see the Imperial Palace in Andor.
God, I hope so. I really, really hope so.
To see the Jedi Temple just completely taken over by Palpatine and the Empire is going to be so sad.
Yeah, and that's something that wasn't in Legends that they made for canon. And when I learned that, I think it was maybe way back in the Lando comics in 2015, I was like, oh, I like that. I like that change a lot, that Palpatine would take what was once a great symbol of the Jedi and be like, nope, it's mine now, and just completely desecrate it. I think that would be a really fun thing to reveal for people who haven't read the comics or books or whatever and don't know that already. I think that would be so much fun.
Fun but sad.
So fun and sad. You know, sad and terrible, but in a fun way.
It'll be similar to probably how we felt when we saw Camino fall.
Yeah.
It'll just be, it won't be falling into an ocean. It'll just be under Palpatine's reign.
Well, it's a good, easy way to communicate just how different things are and how, you know, the Jedi are not around. I don't think we're going to see Force users outside of Palpatine, but like, I don't think we're going to see any open use of the Force in this series. They kind of talked about that in Rogue One, where they were like, there aren't any Jedi that are going to come in and save the day. And I feel like that's the same vibe they're going for here, is that this is, Tony Gilroy has said, this is about the people in the background and what their day-to-day is. So I think showing that the Jedi Temple is there, but it's not anymore, is a really good way to communicate that.
What would be crazy, and I don't think that we'll see this, is if we saw Vader there.
Yeah, sure. Vader's a possibility too. I feel like he's not needed so much as I'm more like Palpatine, political leader Palpatine, I would like to see.
But just because Anakin knew what it was before.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah.
To see him walking those halls.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe that's why he's like, just leave me on Mustafar.
Yeah.
I'll take my castle over there.
He probably doesn't go there because it'll give him flashbacks of what he did there.
That, and it might be something that Palpatine's like, you stay away. Like, it's more that it will bring Anakin back to the surface. Although we have seen in the Lego specials and like the Freemaker adventures, they're there together all the time.
Eli is Do or Do Not 7 wants to know how heavily we think Andor will show the struggle of the rebellion to fight oppression without going too far.
I think that is one of the main messages of this series, or what will be. That's my hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to go pretty far with it. I think this is a good opportunity for them to get kind of dark and show, like we talked about before, like the military police side of the oppression. So not just the faceless stormtroopers, faceless, nameless stormtroopers, but like the people that have joined the Empire to do their bidding.
And to oppress their neighbors and fellow citizens. And we're still kind of speculating on what the characters like Cyril, what they're going to be doing, who these blue armored people are. In the interview with SFX magazine, Tony Gilroy called them he said they're like corporate police, and that Cyril has ambitions to get into the ISB. So it's like this stepping stone to get into the Empire more officially, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it will be a planetary police system, like we have talked about. I think that having Saw Gerrera in this is important, because he is the face of the rebellion that goes too far, and that, yeah, his fight is noble. It's fighting oppression, but he is doing the whole like fighting what he hates instead of saving what he loves. And you can see that in Rogue One, that they're fighting the Empire on Jeddah with complete disregard for the people who lived there. Like, Jyn has to go save a small child because Saw Gerrera's people are just like blowing everything up and they don't care as long as they hurt the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're going to continue to explore that. And I really want a scene like the one from Rebel Rising, that if you haven't read it, Saw Gerrera goes way too far. And I want to see that on screen. I want the people watching this show to feel uncomfortable calling Saw Gerrera like a good guy. Like, I feel like by default he is, because he's part of the rebellion. But he's not really. Like, if you read some of the stuff he did, I'm like, that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the good side, supposedly, but you've gone too far. And so I think having Saw as like the devil on Andor's shoulder and Mon Mothma as the angel, and kind of trying to find the balance of, you know, sometimes you have to fight, but you don't want to lose yourself.
Yeah, and it helps that they've already established all these beats for Saw Gerrera to be the extremist. They've done it in Rogue One, in the Clone Wars, and books. So easy, you know, for them to show that side of things with him, because that's already established.
And to talk about Rebels again, we have seen in season 3, he was part of the Rebel Alliance, and Mon Mothma mentions it in Rogue One. Like, his militancy has caused us problems, and we've parted ways. He doesn't really look at us as allies anymore. So I think we'll be at a point in time where Saw will be working a little more closely with the alliance that doesn't exist yet, but I think he'll be more willing to work with someone like Mon Mothma. But I want some of those moments, probably more in season 2, where everyone's like, Saw, cool it. Like, you can't do that. And he'll be like, you don't go far enough. And I think there's a lot to explore there. Today's video is brought to you by Babbel, the language learning app that sold more than 10 million subscriptions. Whether you're traveling abroad, connecting in a deeper way with family, or just want to learn a new language, Babbel makes learning addictively fun and easy with bite-sized lessons that teach phrases you'll actually use in the real world. Unfortunately, Shriwook and Huttese aren't options yet, but you can choose from 14 languages including Spanish, French, Italian, and German. 15-minute lessons created by over 100 language experts are a perfect way to learn on the go, and you can learn through several options outside of regular lessons with access to podcasts, games, videos, stories, and even live classes in the language you want to learn. And if you're not seeing the results you're hoping for, Babbel offers a 20-day money-back guarantee. Right now, save up to 60% off your subscription when you go to babbel.com/Star Wars. That's babbel.com/Star Wars for up to 60% off your subscription. Babbel, language for life. And now, back to questions.
S. Kurup asks why Light and Magic didn't cover the prequels or major leaps in technology like Jar Jar.
I don't know. You know, I was a little frustrated by that as well. When we were watching the series, and it was like, okay, the first episode is all about the original Star Wars, and I was like, great. And then the next one will probably be about Empire, and I was like, oh no, it's still about Star Wars. And then the next one's about Empire, and I was like, okay. And then the next one's about Jedi and kind of the 80s, and I was like, we're running out of time to talk about more big moments. Where I'm like, I don't consider Light and Magic to be a Star Wars documentary. It's about Industrial Light and Magic, which was born out of Star Wars. So those early movies are obviously very important to show its creation. But I was a little bummed that we didn't get more about the prequels and the jump to digital filmmaking. It kind of just went like, and now we're using computers, and here's Jurassic Park. And then the rest of it was just a really quick run through up to where we are today, and it didn't get the attention that Star Wars or Empire Strikes Back did.
I think there's a lot of different reasons for this. One could be that, like, for them to say, now we use computers, and then just show people on computers. Like, that's not as exciting as seeing them build models and have fun in the 70s. Also, it could be that there might be another season coming for this, or the idea of these little docu-series covering chunks of time. We could get another one kind of all about the prequels. Or the people involved in the prequels don't want to talk about it because they're still burned.
Maybe. Yeah. That was my kind of like, maybe that means we'll get another season. That was my biggest complaint about the documentary, is that it wasn't longer and that we didn't spend a whole episode on Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I don't think they needed to. It's just something I would be interested in. But I thought that for sure we would cover the prequels in more depth. And I was a little bummed that they didn't have the chance to. But I think they were really showing the big ways that, okay, ILM changed movie making in the 70s. And then here's the next time that it completely changed the way movies are made with Jurassic Park. And then, like, kind of going into the digital era where Attack of the Clones is the first ever fully digitally shot movie. And, like, I didn't know that George was responsible for helping create nonlinear editing. Stuff like that. I think they were just trying to show, here's every single way that ILM changed the way movies are made forever, made it more accessible to everyone, because now we have nonlinear editors on our phone, which is insane. That they push technology forward to the point where anyone can make movies, and that was kind of a celebration of what that documentary was about. I loved that moment when Phil Tippett talked about getting his daughter into making movies. Mm-hmm. Her saying, like, I feel like I'm too old for my toys now. And he's like, if you're a filmmaker, you never have to grow up. Let's go make movies with your toys. And, like, oh, it's so sweet. So I think that's what they were focused on a little more than just, here's all of the Star Wars stuff. But I do wish we had talked a little more about the prequels and Jar Jar and all of those leaps in technology as well.
I think, like, because of Ahmed Best's huge, comeback when they brought him out at Celebration and everybody was cheering, and then all the fuss over the show Obi-Wan and having Ewan and Hayden back, maybe they were just waiting for that kind of feedback from the fans. So they know now that, like, the prequel fans are grown up, they want to see more prequel stuff. So maybe this was their plan all along, that eventually they'll bring out more of this kind of behind the scenes stuff, but they just needed to assess the hype. Yeah,
I think that maybe they said, we're going to do a 6-part documentary, and here's what every episode will be about. And hopefully it does well. It gets a good reception. I loved it. I would love it if they said, we're going to do another one. Here's 6 more, and we're going to focus more on the prequels. Like, I would be all about that.
I specifically want to see how they filmed the pod racing stuff, because a lot of that was miniature stuff that they made.
Yeah, that's something that I really miss. It takes me back to, like, the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes, that was just this era where the Phantom Menace and all the prequels really made a bunch of miniatures. Everyone acts like everything is digital, but it's like they made a ton of miniatures. I loved seeing the Minas Tirith miniature they built, or the Bigature as they called them. Like, all that miniature stuff is really, really fun.
Dion Stauber wants to know if Ahsoka will be alienating for regs if it's too closely linked to the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels.
I don't really think so. I think that that's always a danger with Star Wars, that the more you connect with other material, the less likely it is that someone has seen all of it. And that's why, like, I've talked about the funnel before. It's like, if you're reading a Star Wars book, chances are you have watched the Clone Wars. So we can kind of reference up the funnel safely. Mm-hmm. I think someone watching Ahsoka has not necessarily seen the Clone Wars. I think a live action show is farther up the funnel. But I think Dave Filoni knows that. He has said, as far back as when he was working on the Clone Wars, is that we have to craft these stories as if someone coming into them has never seen Star Wars before. And I think that they were under the assumption that they've watched the Clone Wars, but not necessarily watched the prequels or the originals. Mm-hmm. So I think he is going to craft this story in a similar way that will encourage people to go watch the Clone Wars, but not necessarily just drop the world between worlds in without any explanation.
Yeah, they've done a great job of that so far by incorporating little bits and pieces of the animated shows into live action, but to the point where it's like, if you hadn't seen those shows, you're still enjoying yourself. You're still like, hey, look at this blue guy with a cowboy hat. We don't know about his relationship with Boba Fett, but the fans of the animated shows will know the history of that character.
Yeah, Cad Bane was... Honestly, I think the Book of Boba Fett, one of the best things it got right was its fan service and its character inclusion. Black Chrysanthemum is a perfect example to me, someone that shows up and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Black Chrysanthemum from the comics. This is amazing. But if you, like, my parents have obviously never read a Star Wars comic, and they didn't need to. They saw him appear and they were like, bad guy Wookiee, got it. Like, that's what his character...
Scary Wookiee.
Yeah. What did they had a Chewbacca nickname for him, and now I can't remember what it was. Like
Chewbacca.
Something like that. Something silly. But yeah, they see scary Chewbacca and they're like, I know everything I need to know. And I think that that's kind of the trend that will continue. Or something like Cobb Vanth. They bring him into The Mandalorian and they very briefly summarize his story from the Aftermath trilogy. Yeah, they adapted it. They made a couple changes, but they told enough so that people who didn't know the character now know the character. So it's definitely possible. I think that for now I trust them to not alienate people and hopefully be more welcoming and be like, hey, do you like that Hera character? You can watch a whole series about her.
Mm-hmm. 00 asks if Bo-Katan will go after the Darksaber by any means necessary, forcing Din into a fight.
And 00 suggests that Bo-Katan could, like, kidnap Grogu, for example, and basically say, like, you can have him back after you fight me.
Well, I don't like that.
I know you don't.
It's hard to tell from, what little footage we did see at Celebration. Also, a lot of people didn't get to see that footage, but it didn't come off to me as Bo-Katan had kidnapped Grogu. It came off more as they all maybe got separated and she just ended up with him. But I don't know. It's hard because I love the character of Bo-Katan so much and I don't want to see her become an ultimate villain to Din. I know she's kind of headed in that direction, but I think by any means necessary is maybe a little too far.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that that's the conflict they're setting up, is with Bo-Katan being like, if you've watched the Clone Wars, you know that she has a bad past. She has a dark history. She is on a path for redemption, but not necessarily. So I think that's the conflict they're introducing, and the fear in the audience of like, how far will she go to get what she wants? Or will she put aside her own selfish desires and her want to lead Mandalore, and will she follow Din? I think that's kind of going to be her character arc for season 3. So I'm hopeful that she is not willing to do whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. I think she's going to throw the idea around in her head for a little while, but ultimately, hopefully, side with good.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the direction they're going is the whole idea of having to fight to win the Darksaber over. Maybe it's time for that whole idea to end. Because, like, we made Mandalore less about violence with Duchess Satine and all that, so maybe this is gearing up to just change how Mandalorian history works. The whole fight for the Darksaber maybe won't be a thing after this show.
Yeah, and I think they're probably heading towards like it's time for the way to change. Like we don't have to follow the same rules forever. And Bo-Katan especially will be someone who she became superstitious about, I took the Darksaber that one time and it did not go well. So clearly I have to do it the right way now. And it's like, you know that didn't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the idea that she is pointing at Din in this kind of like, oh, he's one of those. Like he's part of that Children of the Watch cult, and they're all superstitious and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, she's over here being very superstitious about this one thing. So, and Din is over here trying to not follow the way, and he's like, "Would you just take the sword, please?" And she won't. So I think that's an interesting dynamic between them. That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.